Hey, what's up people? It is Reaperator here, and today we're coming in with my MCU tier list. We're going to be including all of Phase 4 in this, and without further ado, let's get into this. So, I kind of put these in order, and I'll be going through ranking them. You guys know how tier lists work at this point. I don't got to explain it, but what I do want to say is that I'm ranking them against each other. So, if I put something in D tier or C tier, that doesn't mean I think it's a D or C tier movie. It means that I think it's a D or C tier movie compared to the rest of the MCU. Because let's be honest, when you compare Marvel movies against most other movies that come out, I mean, all of them are going to be objectively good. But when you compare them against each other, that's when you kind of get into, okay, well, this one's better than this one. And that's what I'm going for here. So I also put them in order of release. So let's get started with the first Iron Man, the one that kickstarted the MCU. This is a great movie, and I think it gets a solid A tier. I mean, there's not really much to say. It's so great. I love going back and rewatching this one. It's so good. It deserves a solid A. Now, coming in with the Incredible Hulk. I know some people like Edward Norton better, but I like Mark Ruffalo better. It also might help that I did end up seeing the Avengers before I saw this movie, so maybe that plays a factor. But yeah, I think the MCU made the right choice in recasting here. I'm going to put this one in D tier. The CGI kind of holds the movie back, and I understand it came out in 2008, but Iron Man also came out in 2008, and the special effects looked really good on that. This movie, there's just not much to say about it. It was decent, but it doesn't compare when it comes to the rest of these movies on the list. Next up, we got Iron Man 2. Now, this movie I'm going to go ahead and throw into C tier. It was good, somewhat. I mean, the villains were very forgettable. I mean, Whiplash was kind of cool, but he kind of competed with Justin Hammer, and the two of them sharing the same movie, I didn't really like that much. I would have preferred them just to focus on one or the other, probably Whiplash. He was a lot more interesting. And overall, I think the movie did some things correctly, but it just was nowhere near as good as the first, and nowhere near as good as some of the other movies on the list. Coming in with Thor. Now, this one, again, it wasn't bad, wasn't great. I don't know. There was a lot of plot lines that I think could have been expanded on more. I didn't really like the ending battle. I mean, they had that weird Sentinel robot. I think that's what they called it. I don't even remember. This movie overall was just pretty forgettable, and I really liked what they did with Thor in the future, but this movie just wasn't it for me. Now we're getting into Captain America: The First Avenger. I love this movie. I have rewatched it so many times. It's so great. I really love the whole superheroes in World Wars aspect. I liked when they did it in Wonder Woman with the DC movie, World War One. Awesome. I loved when they did it with this movie, World War Two. It was actually interesting, if you guys didn't know this, is Captain America was kind of created as war propaganda by the U.S. during World War Two. So that's when the character was first made. I think there's a lot of cool ties. The movie even does some nods to the past with his old suit and the fact that he tries to get people to buy war bonds. And overall, this movie is just fantastic. Everything in it is great. It's definitely A tier. I don't know if I like it more than the first Iron Man. I'm going to put it behind it, but it's still great. Those two are neck and neck for me. The First Avengers. This movie holds a special place in my heart. I remember in 2012 going to the theaters. I was 10 years old at the time, and this movie blew me away. It was so cool. I mean, this is like, I believe, maybe not the first superhero team up, but the first superhero team up where they had movie upon movie building off of it, and really it started what we now know as the MCU in the way that they can connect, right? Because you could have all these standalone movies, but this is the movie that brought them all together. Easy S tier. I mean, how can you not like The Avengers? It's one of the best superhero movies ever made. It's so great. Easy S tier. Coming in with Iron Man 3, the MCU's very own Christmas movie. And yes, it is a Christmas movie. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. Just kidding, but guys, this movie is pretty good. It had some things in it that I wasn't too fond of. The villain, again, kind of forgettable. I mean, he was less forgettable than the villains in Iron Man 2, so I'm going to put it in B tier, but it could have been better. I also didn't like how none of the future movies played off the ending. I mean, Iron Man took out his core, he destroyed all of his suits, and you're like, wow, how is Iron Man going to come back from that? And then the next time you see him, it's just like, oh, okay, well, he just made more. Great. So it kind of feels like the ending held no weight. But I did really like the stuff they did with the kid when he crash landed in, I don't remember, some state. But either way, really good movie, B tier. Thor: The Dark World. What's there to say? This is definitely F tier. I mean, the movie is just completely forgettable. The villain was not good at all. The plot was kind of boring. The reality stone was weird. Just everything about it kind of failed for me. Was not a fan of this movie. F tier. And again, F tier compared to the other ones. I think on its own, this movie was good, kind of. Probably a decent movie overall, but MCU-wise, F tier. Now we're on to Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Now, this movie, when I first watched it, I wasn't a huge fan of it because this was around the time when I started watching the Avengers cartoon that they had. I don't remember what year that came out, but I had watched that, so I kind of already knew that Bucky was going to become and be the Winter Soldier, right? So the whole twist where it's like, oh, Bucky's still alive, I saw it coming. Not that that's like a huge plot point, or like, wow, the whole movie is based around that. But yeah, this movie, for me, I would say wasn't as good as the first, but upon rewatching it, I liked it a lot more, and it's going to get a high B tier for me. The spy stuff they did and the whole thing they were doing with Hydra was really good. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe this is the first MCU movie that the Russo bros directed, and everything they've done for the MCU has been great. Guardians of the Galaxy. This movie is amazing. This is another one where I could rewatch it over and over and over again. It just gets better each time. I gotta say, I don't know if I want to put it in S, but it's definitely top of A for now. This movie is so good, guys. I mean, everything they did, James Gunn just simply can't miss. Everything he makes turns out to be a banger. And just, I love the chemistry between all the characters. It was just amazing through and throughout. I don't know how else to put it, guys. Like, this movie. Oh, and the soundtrack. How could I forget about that? The soundtrack is so good for this movie. I still, to this day, will just shuffle the entire playlist of Guardians of the Galaxy. It's so good. Avengers: Age of Ultron. I mean, for me, this movie wasn't bad, but there was just nothing great going on for it. It kind of felt like, okay, we did a good thing with the Avengers 1. Let's just do it again for Avengers 2. And I don't really like that because they didn't innovate or expand on too much. The new characters they introduced were cool. Didn't like how they killed Quicksilver. I mean, how is the fastest man alive going to die from bullets? That seems kind of stupid. But, yeah. Oh, and Ultron, this is another thing where I watched the Avengers cartoon, and I really loved Ultron in that. He was this robot that was set on destroying all of human life. And then they kind of put him in this movie, and they wanted to give him a personality, and they had the guy from The Office. I forgot his actor name, but he played Robert California, was doing the voice. And I like that actor, but I didn't like him as Ultron. I thought they could have casted Ultron better. If at all, I would have been fine with just a completely mechanical, no feelings robot, but I didn't really like how they tried to give him a personality and tried to make him a little bit like Tony Stark, and he kind of had this jealousy thing going on. Didn't really like how they handled it, so because of that, I'm going to put this movie in C tier. I know some people are going to not really agree with that, and that's fine. This is my opinion. You know, if you disagree, let me know why below, but I just wasn't a fan of how they handled Ultron. Overall, this movie is just going to be C tier for me. Definitely above Iron Man 2 and Thor, though. Ant-Man. This is one that I actually didn't watch right away. There are a lot of movies on this list where I didn't really watch them right away. Past the first Avengers, I wasn't really going to see them in theaters all the time. And then when they announced Infinity War, that's when I went back and rewatched everything. And I didn't think I'd like this movie. That's why I didn't watch it. I kind of thought Ant-Man was stupid as a superhero. And then I watched the movie, and I was blown away. This movie is so good. I really like the whole ex-con thing, how that plays into both movies. And this is going to be A tier, but below the rest of them. But this movie is great. The comedy in it was top tier. I really like Scott Lang as a character. I really liked how, you know, they kind of do the whole he wants to be a good father thing. And overall, this movie is great. The only problem with it is I thought the villain could have been a bit better. But, you know, we are going to get to see more of that villain. Apparently, he's going to play MODOK, if I remember correctly, in the third Ant-Man movie that's set to come out. So we'll have to see how they handle him from there. Ooh, now we've got Civil War, or as I like to call it, Avengers 2.5, because this movie packed almost everyone from the MCU into the one movie. It really felt like another Avengers movie to me, and it's so good. Easy S tier for me. The villain was great, and we got to see even more of him in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The whole plot line where it kind of felt like the Avengers were being grounded by reality. I really love that whole thing because if the Avengers existed in real life, the Sokovia Accords would for sure be a thing. You can't just let these guys run around and do what they want. They'll destroy things because they have superhuman abilities. And I really loved how they handled all that. Then they had the other plot with Zemo trying to pit them all up against each other, and it worked. And then you had the whole thing with the introduction of Black Panther, where he kind of broke the cycle of violence. It was really cool. The entire movie is just great writing, and this is one of the ones I believe, again, that is directed by the Russo bros, and they do a really good job. Doctor Strange. Now, this is another one I didn't see right away, but when I went back and watched it again, I was blown away. I didn't really have high expectations for this movie, and it turned out to be really good. Now, I don't know if I can put it in A tier necessarily, but it definitely gets high B tier. This movie is amazing. Guardians Volume 2. Now, this one was not as good as the first, and when I watched it the first time, I probably would have ranked it C or D, but then I watched it again, and I actually ended up liking it a lot more. I wouldn't say it's as good as Doctor Strange or Winter Soldier, but it's definitely better than Iron Man 3. I'm going to put it in B tier. It's a solid movie. I liked it a lot better the second time around watching it. Spider-Man Homecoming. This was an interesting one. First of all, I really loved how they put Donald Glover in the movie, and I hope that they don't waste that. I think they were kind of setting up to where he's supposed to be Aaron Davis, Miles Morales' uncle, and eventually he might play Prowler. We'll have to see, but he talks about a nephew, and Donald Glover, if you guys don't know the whole thing where he wanted to be Spider-Man, but they didn't let him, that kind of prevented me from wanting to see the movie at first because I really wanted Donald Glover to be Spider-Man. But I gotta say, I think they made the right call because having Spider-Man be a kid in this movie kind of sets him up for years to come in the MCU. And if they would have casted Donald Glover, they would have had to go the route of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man where, okay, he's, basically an adult, so we have to show him either after graduation or graduating high school. And Spider-Man has a lot of good high school stories. I don't think they should only stick to those. I'm very excited to see what they do with Spider-Man in the future and kind of use him in his college stage. But we'll have to wait and see for that. But overall, this movie's great. I would definitely put it in A tier. Above Ant-Man, but below the other three. But this movie is pretty great. I think it gets kind of slept on, and Michael Keaton as Vulture was just amazing. The whole twist where he was Liz's dad blew me away the first time I was watching it. Thor Ragnarok, the first, in my opinion, really good Thor standalone movie. I always liked the character, but I always felt like his movies were bad. And then this came out, and again, this is one where I didn't see it right away because the other two Thor movies had me thinking, okay, well, this one won't be that good. But it was good. I would definitely put this in A tier, maybe even S. No, definitely A tier. I definitely don't think it's better than the first three on this list, but it's definitely better than the other two. Thor Ragnarok is a great movie. I love the whole dynamic with him and Hulk. I love the introduction of Valkyrie. Jeff Goldblum as a Grand Master was awesome. The whole scene in Sakaar where Thor's fighter against the Hulk was really awesome. Everything about this movie was great. The only thing that I guess was kind of a downside was the way he defeated Hela. I wasn't too big of a fan of that, but it was also kind of cool. I don't know. Kind of mixed bag on the ending, but it was a great movie. Black Panther. Now, I do like this movie. I, however, do think it's a little bit overrated. The CGI held it back a little bit in that third act. And also, I really like Kendrick Lamar as an artist, and I listened to the album a lot before actually going to see the movie. And I thought the album was underutilized. I know that's not really a good gripe for a movie, but just personally, it kind of made me think, they could have used it a bit more. They had him produce this whole album for the movie, and they didn't end up using a lot of the songs. But this is definitely high B tier for me. It's better than all these other ones on this list. Not quite A tier for me, though. Avengers Infinity War. This one, I remember I had no idea what it was going to be going in. I had no spoilers going for me, and it just blew me away. I mean, this is definitely top of S tier. It's actually my favorite superhero movie of all time. It blended everything that came up before it, and it did it in a great way. This movie is amazing. I don't know if the MCU will ever reach that tier of perfection again. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. Secret Wars could blow it out of the water, but we'll see when we get there, I guess. But this movie was just amazing. Thanos is a great villain. They'd been teasing him since the first Avengers. I mean, I could go on all day about this movie alone, but I gotta kind of keep going here on this tier list. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, this movie isn't great. I would definitely put it in C tier. It's better than Thor, better than Iron Man 2. Probably not better than Avengers Age of Ultron. I don't know. This movie felt a little like the MCU wasn't firing on all cylinders. I can't really name specifically what I don't like about it. It's more just the overall vibe. This movie just could have been better. Hopefully Ant-Man 3 is a lot better than this one. Not that this movie was terrible or anything, but it just could have been better. Captain Marvel. Now, I actually don't hate this movie. I know everybody who loves the MCU hates this movie, and I find most of that to be people just don't like Brie Larson, which I guess is fair. Her personality in real life kind of comes off as a bit like cocky and stuck up, and you do see a little bit of that in her character. And, you know, the movie's a bit forgettable, but I also think it has a lot going for it. I like the whole memory loss thing. The twist with the Kree being the bad guys and the Skrulls being the good guys kind of threw me the first time I was watching it. I love the 90s stuff. It was really cool. Seeing young Nick Fury and young Agent Coulson was really cool. I would put this high C. Maybe B. Yeah, I like this movie better than the other ones for sure. Or low B, my bad. Yeah, low B tier. Endgame. Now, once again, I think this movie is overrated. Everybody loves this movie. I would put it top of A. Now, this movie was fan service. In most part, it was done right. There was so much to love about this movie. The only thing I didn't really like, and I know this is common of all comic books, is eventually they get into time travel. And I'm not against time travel as a concept, but it's just not always interesting. I mean, we've seen it done so many times before, and just the way they kind of did it felt kind of cheap in this movie. I don't know. But either way, it's not a bad movie by any means. It's top of A. I mean, it's a great movie. It's just not quite S tier for me. Spider-Man Far From Home. This is another one. I'm going to throw it into A. Under Homecoming, though. I like Homecoming better. I know that's not a popular opinion, but this movie for me hit all the same things as the first movie, just slightly less. I pretty much liked everything about it, and the ending was great. I mean, seeing J. Jonah Jameson, J.K. Simmons come back and reprising the role shocked the heck out of me in theaters. It was so amazing to see. So yeah, there's nothing really wrong with this movie, but I wouldn't put it in S tier by any means, and I wouldn't say it's better than Homecoming. Now we get into the shows, and I know some people are going to think it's kind of weird that I'm rating the shows with the movies, but here's the thing. When you think about it, all the shows are just extended movies, and I really like this one. The mystery aspect, all the callbacks to old television was all amazing, and I think this show is probably, maybe not the best, but one of the best Disney shows, or not Disney shows, MCU shows that we've gotten so far. I really hope they make more like this. I loved all the mystery surrounding it. I'm very curious to see what they do with Vision in the future, and this one's going to be A tier for me. I'll probably put it above Ant-Man, but below all the rest. But yeah, this show was so good. I really hope we get to see either a season 2 or just more developed on it in the future. I love Scarlet Witch as a character, and I love Vision as a character. We need to see more. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, this show is good to an extent. I thought they got a little bit too political. Not that I disagree with any of the politics involved with this movie. It's just whenever a movie or TV show kind of introduces politics, it feels like it breaks the immersion for me. And that's a big part for me when I'm watching a movie or TV show. I want to feel immersed in the universe that they're in. And when they start talking about real world problems, it kind of throws me out of the loop, and then it comes off as preachy. And again, it's not that I disagree with anything that was said in the show. It's just politics and TV for me don't typically mix well unless they do it right, like in The Boys. So I will put this at the bottom of C tier. Could have been better. Ooh, coming in with Loki. Now, this was, in my opinion, the best Disney Plus series we've gotten for the MCU. This is going to be an easy A tier. Probably above Spider-Man. Yeah, but below Ragnarok. Again, not too big of a fan of time travel, but this was coming off Endgame, and I like the way how, okay, we already have it in Endgame. What more can we do with it? They kind of fleshed out more of how the time travel works. They introduced the TVA, which is really cool. Kang the Conqueror got introduced, and the ending was really interesting, and it kind of set up how the multiverse works for the rest of the MCU. Really good series. I believe it's getting a season 2, and I cannot wait for that. Black Widow, another one that I disagree with the popular opinion, and I think this was actually a really good movie. The third act was a little over the top, but not too bad. Some of the characters introduced were really cool. I really like Black Widow's sister and her dad. Those are both great characters. Taskmaster obviously could have been better. They didn't really talk, and I don't even care that Taskmaster got gender swapped. I just care that the character doesn't really feel like it should. So I would say this is bottom of B tier for me. What If? Now this one is going to get slept on by people because it's animation, but this is such a great show. I mean, one of my favorite episodes was if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. I've rewatched that probably 5 or 6 times. I love this show. The animation looks great. The storylines are great. I thought they could have done a little bit without connecting all of them, especially because we didn't even get the Gamora episodes, so that felt kind of out of place. That's my only gripe with the show, though. I really like how they do one-off stories instead of connecting them, but then at the end they kind of did connect them, and I wasn't a fan of the finale. But overall, I would say this is high B tier. Probably the top of B tier. Yeah. Shang-Chi. This one blew me out of the water. I was not expecting this to be good because I had no idea who Shang-Chi or the Ten Rings were, other than, Iron Man 3 kind of mentioned them, but it was a hoax or whatever. It was like a fake Ten Rings type thing. But this movie, oh my god, was it amazing. I also loved how in like the first 2 acts, they really focused on hand-to-hand combat, kind of like what they did with the Netflix Daredevil series. And this was just an amazing movie. This is definitely going to go in A tier. I wouldn't say it's as good as anything else. Besides, it was better than Ant-Man. But yeah, this movie was great. Eternals, I don't even want to spend time. It's obviously the bottom of F tier. This is the only movie where I think, even compared to the MCU, it's still a bad movie. They introduced way too many characters at once, and I know some people have read the comics, and because of that, they understand what the characters are, so the movie's a bit better for them. But I haven't read too many Marvel comics, so for me, this movie just introduced a bunch of characters I've never heard of. They didn't spend time developing any of the characters. When characters would die or change motives and there was like plot twists, I wasn't invested in them, so I didn't care about them. The only thing I really liked about this movie was what they're setting up in the future with Kit Harington as, I think he's called the Black Knight or something like that. Not too sure because, again, I'm not too familiar with Marvel Comics. But yeah, this movie was just terrible. I'm not going to spend too much time picking it apart other than what I just did, but just absolute bottom of the tier list. I hated this movie. Hawkeye. Now, this was another great series that, again, I wasn't really expecting. Hawkeye's always kind of just been that side character who's there and doesn't do too much. And the show actually plays into it. They talk about more with the Ronin, which I think was like the coolest thing they ever did with Hawkeye. Really cool series. I loved Kate Bishop's dynamic with Hawkeye. I liked when they introduced Black Widow's sister again. They did a lot of cool things with the show. I'm going to put it in A tier. Not as good as WandaVision, not as good as Shang-Chi, but better than Ant-Man for sure. No Way Home, I mean, this gets an obvious S tier. I didn't like it as much as the rest on S tier, but I mean, I loved the original Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man movies when I was a kid, so to see Tobey Maguire come back was just amazing. And Andrew Garfield too. I wasn't too big of a fan of those movies, but I always liked Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. He was what saved those movies from being absolute trash, and this movie just did all the characters justice. The only thing and why I'm putting it at the bottom of S tier is because the plot was a little rushed because they had so much to do in the short span of what a movie can be. But yeah, this movie is just amazing. Everybody knows No Way Home is a great and fantastic movie. Coming in with Moon Knight. Now, this show it's good, but the violence was toned down, and I get that they kind of have to because the MCU has been all PG-13, but I think some of the MCU should start kind of diving into the more gritty and dark aspect of comics. I know Marvel doesn't typically focus on that all too much, but there are times when they do it, and all the scenes of violence where you could have seen Moon Knight go off kind of get, chucked to the wayside, and it's like, oh, he blacked out. And that was kind of cool, but I would have preferred to see the violence. But either way, even with that, this show is pretty amazing. I would put it in B tier above What If, above the rest. It's a great show. Multiverse of Madness. Now, this is one where I was a little disappointed seeing it in theaters. I mean, the movie is called Multiverse of Madness, so I expected a lot of cool multiverse hopping and a lot of strange stuff, and they did, of course, but they didn't do it to the extent that I wanted. And I kind of get that the movie was actually just Scarlet Witch has been corrupted by the Darkhold. She's evil now, so that's going to be the main gist. And you can't call the movie something along those lines or something involving Scarlet Witch without throwing out the twist of the plot. So I kind of get it, but at the same time, this movie just was not what I was expecting. I did love that Sam Raimi directed it and all the horror elements, and that saves it from being C tier, but it's definitely bottom of B. Miss Marvel. Now, this is one I came into with low expectations, and I gotta say, for the most part, those expectations held true. This show could have been something amazing. I mean, if anyone's seen it, the first episode is so amazing. They have all this cool art style stuff going on. I loved the pilot of the show, and if the rest of the show would have held that same energy, this would have been an easy A tier. However, they didn't. They kind of stopped doing all those cool, like, colorful animations. It really reminded me of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where it's like an animated live action film combined into one, and they didn't keep that energy, and the middle of the show drags. There were some good moments, but overall I would say this is a D tier show. It could have been better. Like I said, they should have kept the energy from the first episode and just made that the whole series, and this would have been A tier. However, they didn't, and it drags in a lot of parts. But I do like the character of Kamala Khan, and I hope they use her better in the future. Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, this one is hated by most people. I don't hate it. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's a great movie. I saw this comparison that actually I thought was pretty funny, in that this is pretty much just a boneless Ragnarok, which I'd agree. It's better than the first two Thor movies for sure. However, it's not better than Ragnarok, and it's not better than a lot of the rest of the ones on this list. So, yeah, I don't know. They wasted Gore pretty much by making him a bland villain when he could have been so much more. They started him off being really cool, and then for whatever reason, they just stopped keeping that energy for the rest of the movie. I would put this above the first Thor, but below the rest. This movie just could have been better, and the joke with the screaming goats was just not that funny after the first one or two times, and they did it like 8 times in the movie. It's like, wow, you should not use a joke that many times. It's not funny. But yeah. She-Hulk. This is, I believe, the first MCU project that I reviewed on this channel. Another one that I feel like is underrated. I don't know why people hate on it so much. The scene with her twerking was cringe, obviously, but other than that, I thought this was a decent show. I'd put it in B tier, probably above these ones. Yeah, I'd say it's above those three, not above the rest, but She-Hulk was good. I really don't know why people hate on it that much. It was cool seeing all the cameos, but aside from that, I like the character of Jen Walters. I like that conflict of, okay, she has these powers that she didn't really want, and, you know, it's kind of like there was this episode, I forgot which one, but they talk about how she had to go from like being just the average Jen Walters, and now she's like the most popular person because of She-Hulk, like the most popular girl in school, I think she compared it to, but she feels like it's unearned, and I really liked that aspect of the show. Werewolf by Night. This one, I don't think anyone was really expecting them to make. It wasn't bad by any means. I kind of find it hard to relate to the rest of these because it's not really a superhero movie. It's, you know, a horror kind of movie. Not really horror, but just Halloween-based stuff. It came out around Halloween. It was clearly a seasonal thing. And I liked it, but to be honest, I didn't think it was, like, amazing. I'd probably put it at the top of C, but I don't know. It's not my kind of thing. Horror movies, for me, I kind of don't like too much. Not that I'm scared of them. Guys, I swear I'm not. Like, I'm not scared of them. No, but all jokes aside, it was decent. It's just, you know, not really what I was expecting from the MCU. Wakanda Forever. Now, this movie was really, really good. If you guys saw my review, you know that I liked it. I would put it in B tier, right behind Black Panther. I did think the original was better, but Wakanda Forever, for me, it just had some parts where it lacked. Again, the soundtrack, I think they should have let Kendrick do another album. That would have made the soundtrack more interesting for me. And I didn't really like how, I mentioned this in my review too, but I don't really like how all of Wakanda was cool with just letting Namor and the Talokan just leave after they completely demolished their capital city and killed their queen. I mean, I get that Shuri didn't really want to be like Killmonger, but at the same time, it's like it's not just Shuri's decision; it's all of Wakanda's decision. I really didn't think that part was believable, but other than that, this movie has a lot going for it. I think it's great. Now, coming in, we've got the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. I would put this in A tier above a lot of these shows and movies. I would honestly put it up to here, being better than Loki, but worse than Ragnarok. I mean, this movie, or special presentation, I guess, was so good. And I loved the whole holiday theme. Again, James Gunn just never misses. This movie was just, I mean, I went into this on my review on it, but having Kevin Bacon in it and all this stuff was just amazing. I really liked what they did with it. I hope we get to see more stuff like this. Maybe not a holiday special for Christmas necessarily, but they could do other specials for other holidays, or maybe even just other specials for other events. I really like this movie, and again, I think the MCU should make a lot more of stuff like this. Now, as for the rest of these, I'm not really counting them. Other than Morbius, I mean, this is easy S tier. I mean, it sold more billion tickets. Like, it's obviously the best movie of all time. Other than Morbius, though, I wouldn't really consider the rest of these MCU necessarily. Now, I Am Groot's the one exception, and it's because I haven't seen it. So I can't rate something I haven't seen. Maybe I should go and watch it. I don't know. It kind of looked like it was made for kids, so I didn't really seem interested in checking out. But the rest of these movies and shows, for the most part, are good, but I wouldn't really consider them like MCU entries, because the rest of these were kind of tacked onto the MCU after the fact, but they were made originally to exist outside of them, besides maybe Marvel Legends, which again I haven't seen. So I don't really consider them MCU entries, so I'm not really putting them on this list. I kind of feel like it's unfair. But yeah, that is going to conclude my MCU tier list. You have the obvious best choice being Morbius, and the obvious worst choice being Eternals. That's my ranking. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with anything in the comment section below. And if you guys want to see more of this kind of content from me, then hit the subscribe button and ring the bell, and that way you'll always be notified when I upload in the future. See you guys in the next one. Peace.